but a lot of it's still coming through.
Yeah, I think a lot of our flavor is still there. That's just the flavor of like Angel. I think we acquired.
Yeah, so the thing is, I wouldn't call it a problem. The challenge of working with a product that was engineered like more than 10 years ago is that the approach to software development has changed very much. So before it was about defining functions and then programming those functions and making that into a system. And now most systems come from, they design a user experience, and from user experience, they design the interface, and then they move into the actual programming of the product. So it was hard to shift into that. So now that is what we're doing. We think about how the student and the faculty are going to experience the software, and then we go into, all the background of the development, right? So
there was this guy, the company launched one of our 5 acquisitions was called MyEDU. Very few people had never heard of this. But there was a design shop that built this MyEDU product. It was based around some really well-known designers, like learning design, usability design. And like we needed that. Like if you look at the LMS 5 or 10 years ago, it looks like 1990s LMS. There was a lot of like, oh, this is drastically different the way people look at technology. So we needed, as we unified our product team, to come back with a different design philosophy. And so these are the guys that did. And so they built, have you seen the labs where they'll put people in a room with one-way mirrors, and or those cameras watching them, and they're like, interact with this. And they track like where you go, where your eyes are, and how much time and lag, the usability labs. We built one of those, and we test all our stuff. We do ethnographic research where we consentingly will follow students around and be like, I want to see what your life is like. So we'll go to class with them and we'll see what they take out of their bag, what's in their backpack, and like where they study and how they study, and the other tools they use. And then you go work into building something, right? Whereas in the past, to Jorge's point, we'd be like, give me the 100 features that need to be here, and we just start building features. Whereas the other way, you're like, how do people live with this? How do you live in this? And then let's work from what is feel like a really great experience back into the tools.
There's also one thing that's an unseen factor that ultimately it amounted to a very complicated situation is that when we get into rooms like these, we don't have like a standard faculty member. You usually get the ones that are more engaged, the ones that are willing to do or go the extra mile, that are very sophisticated. So those are the people who are actually providing us feedback. They were like asking, give me that feature, give me that. I want to make, I want to do this, this, and that. And that's all great because that's like cutting edge, but the vast majority of faculty members will never do it, right? I mean, they don't even have the not the skills, but they don't have the willingness to do it or the time, right? Just like, I don't want to do double blind, delegated grading on every paper I submit, right? I mean, I don't want to do all this complicated stuff. I just want to post something, get an assignment, and grade it, and just move on, right? So ultimately, all of those things that we considered really valuable, and they're really valuable. They got into the final product, and they just made a very complicated interface product overall.
Yeah. It's good to be the new guy and like get a start over, right? Versus it's a different position, but like I think that's what's great about this. We didn't have to be the next version, BlackBoard 10 versus BlackBoard 9. We get to like reimagine all things.
Yeah, not every company will do what we have.
It's not easy. I don't know if I would have done it over this way. But I like where we're at. Yep. It's in the end, that's really one of them. We moved to one call question surveys. We do a lot of calls for people. Before it was like, 1 to 5, how is this? 1 to 5, how is this? And the one call survey now is, would you recommend this to a friend and family? From that, you can kind of derive better because the other ones over there. It's gotta be industry shit.
Usually those survey techniques they come from premium. They have a very successful research outfit around getting like real
Time and access for you.
Like, if you have a hybrid
Qualtrics
class,
happening that Qualtrics that you talk about data center and stuff.
there's a reason why they pull it.
Basic, yeah, feel free to grab one. I was just gonna explain what it is basically that's what we'll be looking at to kind of break out the decisions, so kind of keep that in mind.
The fees are $5 per person.
Yeah.
So are you paying us?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You can bring us anything you want.
I know.
It's a good one.
Pharmaceutical companies bring us food.
Oh, we-
They do?
Or pens.
They bring you food, we bring you drugs. Wait, it should be
What?
the other way around. We have free,
That'd be a good one.
free Lipitor samples in the lobby. Yeah.
So nursing?
Yeah.
She's like, no, auto mechanics.
Yes.
Welding.
Those guys need pharmacology as well. Different stuff.
Okay, so it is
It's for
noon, but whenever you think we're ready to,
We can make this all about nursing?
can we?
Everybody else can, appreciate it.
Maybe not.
We're good?
We're good? Okay, so was it okay the way that we handled the first time? Okay.
I'm open to the free flow.
Okay, so just for context, in the morning session, sorry about that. In the morning session, instead of having 1 hour presentation and then 1 hour Q&A, what I did was just, have questions as they come up, just please interrupt me at any moment. I think it's more conversational that way, and also, probably easier and all. So, welcome, I'm Jorge Salinas, I work for BlackBoard, solutions engineer. What I'll do today is I'm going to go over our BlackBoard Learn Ultra learning management system. I'm going to go over certain features, the philosophy behind the development that we've been doing for the last several years. And as I said before, at any moment if you have questions or if my accent is getting in the way, please let me know. I'll try to answer your questions. Okay. So let's get going. I'm logged in as an instructor into BlackBoard Learn Ultra. So a few things. BlackBoard has been around for more than 20 years now. The BlackBoard Learn LMS has also been around for more than 30 years. And over the course of those 20 years, we have gone through several iterations of our software. So it got started back in the 90s. And now it has become a very different thing. And as we all know, the technological landscape for everyone has changed in the last 20 years. So it's hard to imagine a time where there was no YouTube, no Netflix, no FaceTime, no FaceTime, nothing like that. So now we have video calling, basically we're living Star Trek times, right? So that has changed the expectations of our students. And what we wanted to do was to build an LMS that could accommodate for this new lifestyle and for these new expectations. And as well, also why not provide, a more intuitive, easy to use interface for faculty and students to work, and go through the teaching and learning process. So we did that by sorry, instead of thinking of a better version of what we already had, what we did was we went through some ethnographic research. We looked at how students and faculty interacted with the system. We looked at their daily lives, not just when they were, submitting an assignment, but really what happened at the beginning of the day, what is it that they wanted to get in terms of information from the system, what were the things that they were having more issues with. And so several things came out of that, right? The one major thing was that there's a fundamental difference between how we interact with information systems today and how we used to do that back in the 90s. And the major shift is that instead of requiring our users or our students and faculty to go in and search for the things that are important inside courses, we are now kind of used to information being pushed to us, and not just being pushed to us, but rather competing, right? So there's a way in which people kind of refer to all of those services like Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram. Those are basically attention systems, right? So they're trying to grab your attention. So it is difficult to compete in that situation. So what we've done is that we've created an interface in which instead of having students go in and find the courses that they're taking, and then finding the activities that they have to submit for a particular day, or basically trying to find out what's important and relevant for their week. We're trying to surface all that up in an easy way, something that's easy to interact with. So what we're looking at on this on the screen right now, that is, I'm logged into BlackBoard as an instructor. Now the instructor interface and the student interface, they're almost identical, right? So that way we kind of guarantee that our courses are more in tune with the student experience on a day-to-day. But basically the stream is a way for me to know what's going on in my courses as I log in today. Right now, if I'm teaching several courses, then there might be a lot of information, lots of things going on. So the stream categorizes or classifies what's important in my courses in several categories, basically. So I can see what's upcoming. So if I have some activities, some discussions, tests, or assignments that are going to happen in the following days, they will be classified as upcoming. If something's going on today, like a message from one of my students, a new discussion post that I can grade, or an assignment that students are going to be submitting today, all of that happens in this today kind of area. And then things that are happening or have been happening recently in my course, they will be classified in this recent section. Now, all of the items within this stream, right, they're interactive. So let me zoom in here for a bit. So I have a message in one of my courses, which is in Introduction to Astronomy. Sadly, it's not nursing or anything in that area, but that's basically it. So I have an image of the student that was posted 8 minutes ago, I think. He's actually offering his classmates some help, because he's actually doing quite well. So that message was sent to everyone in the course, and that's why it appeared in my stream. So if I want to interact with the student, I can just click on the message. That will display the text on the message, and if I want to, I can respond directly here. I think it's great. You're helping, right? So, and if I want to send a copy to that person's email, I can just tag that in and send that to the email, or I can add, maybe I should bring in, hey, Trish, maybe you should take advantage of, this message. So the idea is that everything, whenever it pops up, whenever you can see something, any item with that's relevant to the course, you should have the option to interact with it without necessarily having to go in and open the course and navigate, and find where the things are happening. Now, also the stream is a good medium for us to
know a bit more about what's going on in their courses. And I think this is a good example, right? So, as I said before, I'm teaching several courses in this demo environment, and the system is telling me that there are some students that are falling behind. One of them has been absent, actually. Now, the idea is that we want to help faculty be more proactive, or have access to information before it actually becomes a problem for students. And when we're talking about very courses or terms that are very reduced in terms of time, I mean, just being on top of students that might be at risk is very important. So if I click on that particular message, then I'm taken into my my analytics, or my course analytics interface. I can see here all my students, and as you can see, they're color coded, right? Depending on their performance. But I can also see in kind of this graphical way how my students are performing. So you can see some of them now that have been selected by the system automatically. So those are 6 students that have been trending down, their activity is low, their grades are low, or they haven't logged into the system. And to the right, you can see that those students have been automatically selected. So if I click on any of these dots, right, let's look into Dominic, I can see the information for Dominic. So even though Dominic's activity is quite low, his grades are slightly improving, but he still is not above 50%. So he's not doing that great. Now, all of this information helps me understand. So I'm comparing, in this case, I'm comparing Dominic with the course average. So that line there, that's the course average, and the gray bars represent kind of the spread on how the students are kind of performing in that course. So I can look at the data in a graphical way, or I can look into it like in more detailed tabular format. So I can either schedule an appointment with Dominic, or send a message to Dominic and ask him like what's going on, or I can send a message or schedule an appointment for all the students that the system has automatically selected for. Now, this could be something that's useful for you, or it can be also accessed by advisors that can follow up on this students. Now, let me go into the stream again. So sometimes, depending on how many courses you're teaching and the type and level of activity that might be going on in your courses, you might find that this information is probably too much. So the stream can be configured depending on how you want to manage your workload and how you want to manage your workday as an instructor, right? So, because this is a good way for you to find and actually grade assignments. I mean, this is a good way to also know what kind of work you have to do in a day. But you might want to say, okay, I want to filter only things that I want to grade, or messages that I've got from students, or overall, I don't want a lot of things to appear here in my stream, so I can just change this so that I have basically messages, gradable items. I don't want to look into discussions because I don't have any gradable discussions in my course probably. And then student performance alerts, right? And as I do that, then that changes the composition of my stream. Again, depending on how I like to kind of consume this information in my system, I can filter that. Also, I mean, if email is one of your preferred methods of consuming information, you can select email notifications, and you can say, send me a notification right away if I have a new message from a student, or basically email me once a day for, let's say, new discussion messages and let's say new and upcoming due dates, right? So you can see that you can have several options there in terms of notifications. You can have like a summary each day, or you can have an instant message sent to your inbox, right? So let me go and mark all of these again. Now, sure, of course.
How does the stream look on like your cell phone? Like, I am not on campus majority of my time here.
Of course.
I'm in clinical, and And so, like, if a student were to message me and say that they're sick or something like that, how is this gonna look on my cell phone? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is a lot to try and like sign into.
Correct. So that's a great, thank you for the question, because that's actually where I was going to go with this. So everything that we build in here has been built with mobile first kind of perspective. So we understand that we all, including students, and the first thing that we do every morning is we basically take this thing and we look at what we have to do on the day, right? So unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, that is how we live, right? So let me show you this is my phone right here, okay? So this is my phone. The way that we handle that is if you see this browser, right? This is my computer. If I make this browser smaller, you'll see how the system adapts, right? So basically, that is the same principle that's going to happen when I move over to my phone. So right now, I'm logged in. Oops, I have been logged out. So when I log in from my phone using the browser, right? When I'm using the browser, it will have the same look and feel. So you can see on the right, basically, that's my phone. You can see on the left, that's the browser. It's basically the same information presented in the same way. The only difference is that I'm using my phone. So, and if I tap anything in here, right? Let's go into that assignment, right? If I tap into the assignment, I go into, oh, that's a message, sorry. Well, you get the idea, right? So I have the same perspective and the same functionality on my phone as I do on my computer screen. Another thing is that while having all of that type of access using a browser is very useful, the browser in the phone or the tablet does not necessarily use all the functionality within the phone. So if I want to be, be notified that things are going on, things that are relevant in my course. So that's why we also have the application. So we have one for instructors and we have one for students. So I'm going to go into the student application right now. And as you can see, the student has, this is the app, right? So it has the same approach, it has the same activity stream, but it does have some certain features that help me in my day-to-day life as a student. So I went into the due dates view. It organizes everything that I have to do in this kind of task list approach. And if I want to submit or take a test, submit an assignment or take a test, I just tap into the assignment. This one was submitted a few moments ago, but if I want to add a new attempt, I can just tap on Start Attempt, right? And I can add content or submit, a file from, oh, not OneDrive, I have it in Dropbox. So I can just find file from my Dropbox, click Submit, and that's it, or touch Submit, and that's it. So, I'm sorry. So the application will let me basically go and navigate my courses, but it does take advantage of the functionality of the phone so that I'm always, connected to the course. So if I go into settings, this is where I can link into my external storage accounts. I can, I'm not going to go into that one. I can actually offload content. So if I am traveling a lot, or if I'm out there where there's no cell reception, I can download documents from my course and actually access them offline. And so basically, I can take the course with me. So I can set it up to auto sync. So if there's new stuff, it will automatically download it once I get back into connection, or I want to download it only when I'm connected to a Wi-Fi. So again, students who are very mindful of their data plans and whatnot, they can use that to their advantage. So again, using the phone application, I have notifications, I have access to other resources in my phone, I can also use the camera, I can do some pinch and zoom, things that, people would expect from a mobile application. Yes,
You can filter the view on the computer, the stream, the view.
That's right.
Stream looks. And you can filter the way the stream looks on the phone.
so the same settings for the stream that you set up in the
So they
computer.
are not separate.
They are the same, yeah. So it's mobile first. So again, everything that's in the system, you will have access to on the phone. The application, though, again, as I said, is built for use cases that are more naturally, work on a phone. So the philosophy behind the due date view is that students are not necessarily the best at time management and organizing their calendar. So every activity that they have will automatically be added into that due dates view. They also have a calendar. They can add new items into that calendar so they can use that to organize their time as well. So let me go into the left side before I haven't gone into a course yet, right? So let me go into the left side navigation. So the first part of that navigation is the institutional page where we have, this is where your administrators will set up links that are relevant for you as a faculty member. It will change if you're a student. So things and resources that will help you through your academic life, access to the help desk, campus resources and whatnot. Then we all have our profiles. So in this case, I can add my own picture, or I can have a picture be loaded, automatically from the student information system, depending on how you guys want to set it up. But here's where I can connect to external accounts, OneDrive, Dropbox, all those things, and I can set my sharing or my security settings. So I want to just share my name and my email, but I don't want to share other aspects of my life. So this is where I can have all that information and control my privacy settings. Now, let me jump over the courses and organizations. I'm going to jump into the calendar. So this unified calendar shows all the activities for all the courses that I'm teaching in this case, or teaching or taking. All courses are color-coded automatically. You don't have to choose a color for each one of them. Automatically, every time you see that light blue, you know it's going to be English composition. If it's purple or magenta, that's basically astronomy. And if these due dates, if you just drag and drop them, that is going to automatically change the due date for your students. We have a monthly view, right? Again, you can see the activities for all the courses that you're teaching. And just like students, you also have a due date, although you don't have to submit your work. But it's a good way to know it's when you're going to start your grading workflows, right? Now, the calendar, you can, and I like this use case, if you're teaching several sections of the same course, or you're teaching several courses, you might want to have unified office hours, right? So you can add an event to an individual course. You can change the course schedule, how many frequencies per week and whatnot, or you can add an office hours. And here you can say, oh, I want to add this office hours session to all the courses that I'm teaching. It's going to be on Fridays from 1 to 2, and I'm going to repeat this every week, or at least, repeat monthly, right? Again, so it depends on what the schedule I want, right? I can say, okay, let's do Mondays and Fridays, and let's have that happen for 5 weeks, and that's it. I can add my Zoom location in here, or I can add Collaborate, which I'll show in a minute. Click Save. That's it. So that automatically created that event, my office hours for all my courses. Students will have that in their calendar, so they always know that you're going to be available that day. Now, messages, again, unified messaging for all of the courses. They're all here. Again, they're categorized or grouped by course. So these are the messages for my English composition course. This is astronomy. If I want to, let's say I want to send an alert or an announcement for my astronomy course, I can just click here on the plus sign, select all course members, and say no plus. Right? Now I can send an email copy so that they're alerted. They also can get a notification on the phone once they get that alert or message. When you send a message like this one, right? That without replies, it had that kind of little checkbox. If I do that, then it basically is more like an alert or an announcement. It will bubble up to students' stream all the way to the top, and it will be highlighted as something important. It also will send a notification to their phones right there and then. Let me go into grades, and I'm not going to go there into the grade book. I just want to show this area. You can see how, again, all the grades, all the submissions by my students are grouped by course. I can see that some of them have already been graded but have not been posted. Some of them I haven't graded. So the difference here is that I can grade papers or I can grade assignments, and whenever I'm ready to send the grades back, I can post them all at once back to students. Sorry about that. So I can, as an instructor, I can manage my workload. So sometimes I can't grade all assignments at once one night. So I'll do it in batches, and once I'm done, I'm ready to have those one-on-one sessions with my students. I can post those grades back to students when I write one, and I can do that, right now with just clicking that, post some grades. That's it. Now, any questions so far? All good? Nice and easy. So I'm going into the courses section now. So courses section, teaching several courses. You can see they're all color coded, as I said before. Courses will arrange in here depending on where they are in the term. So sometimes you have some, you're towards the end of the term, but you already have the courses for the next term. They have already been created for you. They will appear on the right. So in the upcoming courses section. If you have courses from previous terms, they will appear on the left. So you have kind of that progression organization there. If you have a course that you don't want to see, like this one, you can just click on that little eye in there. That's going to hide the course. So whenever you hide a course from this view, it actually removes everything that happens in the stream. So sometimes you might be in another course with another instructor, or basically it's a course from previous terms, and you don't want anything to come up in the stream. Now, the stream, usually what it will do, it will pop up things that are in the due date calendar or anything, something going on in the course. So if it's a course that's not really active, there's really basically no chance that the stream is going to have something in there, but you don't want to be cluttering your space. So now, where did the course go, right? So on the top right, you see that I have a filter right now. I can either select all my courses that I teach, courses that are open, or completed courses. So because let me go into hidden courses. So this one right here, you'll see that it has a lock, right? So sometimes I want to mark a course as private, right? So that lets me go in, make some changes. Students are enrolled in the course. They will still see that they are enrolled in the course, but they will know that it has been marked private by the instructor. So maybe you just want to, cut communications for a bit, rearrange the content, and make it open again. You can do that anytime. And you can also mark courses as completed. And reopening that to students, okay? So let me now go into my astronomy course. Where is that? Courses I'm teaching, astronomy. Okay, so let's look at how the course is built. Now, one of the things that we learned from all of our research with students is that okay, so let's make this a bit interactive. So what do you guys think is the main concern that students have when they're coming into the elements? Anyone care to guess what it is? Their main point of aggravation. Something that came up with almost every student that we talked to. No? No guesses? Okay. It's not that evident because, we're only teaching, we haven't seen this. But students, easy to use, well, it's a very broad kind of term, right? Yeah, easy to use is something that they want, but really what they really felt more strongly about was that every course was different. So they take 3, 4, 5 courses sometimes. Each course looks different colors, things are in different places, links are different. So if you consider the life of a student, when they go through a program, they take several, courses, and each one of those looks different and things are in different places. So what we try to do is to simplify the interface for courses while maintaining the capabilities of organizing content and activity in a way that made sense for faculty. So every time you log into a course, you always see in the top right corner, you'll see the course content, the calendar, the discussion forums, the gradebook, messages, and the course analytics. If you're a student, you look into your own analytics. If you're an instructor, you look into the course analytics. So all courses the same, right? To your left, again, same thing. Roster, description, attendance. So now inside the course content, you can organize content as any, if you want to use weeks, if you want to use modules, if you want to use units, if you want to hide them and show them whenever, at the different points in the term, you can do that all within the content section. Right now, the content section, again, for faculty, one of the most complicated situations or the things that they thought was a bit, probably too hard to accomplish was to add new content or create new content for the course, right? So if you want to add a file, you just want to add that file, you want to make it as easy as possible, you want to make that file available to your students, right? So what do? I have a file right here, it's a simple text file, and I want to add that into, let's say, this part of the course, right? So if I click one of those plus signs, everywhere you see a plus sign in the system, that means that you can add something, right? Pretty straightforward. So you can create new stuff, copy content from other courses, but in this case, I just want to upload a document. So I take this document, drag and drop, and that uploads the document into that section of the course. That's it. Now, originally it's hidden from students, but I can make that visible by just clicking that. If I don't like where it sits now, I can just drag and drop that and change the order. If I don't like it, ultimately I can just delete like that. That's it. Now, if I have lots of files that I want to upload, I need to upload them here. I have a folder, just a couple of files. Let me add another one there. Just drag and drop that in here. So the system will automatically create a folder and all the files included will be in there. That's it. So it's simple, right?
What about PowerPoint?
You can just drag and drop a PowerPoint in here.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So let me go into the left side of the screen of the course. Before I go deeper into course functions, I want to show you this to the left. Okay, so roster, all your students in the course. The instructors are tagged with an instructor tag. If you have teaching assistants, which you might not have, they will have a TA. So students can identify who is instructor, who is teaching assistant. If you have more than one instructor, they can see who is instructor. We can also mark a student as requiring accommodations. So that is going to allow students to have a bit more time to submit their assignments. The due dates will not apply to them, things that automatically system will allow the students to be, have a more flexible experience. Now you can have that in a kind of a graphical way. You can have a list format, right? Now, I don't know if this is available. In certain cases, you want to invite students or, well, it depends on institutional policy, right? Now, let's look into the course room. So one of the things that we want to enable is collaboration, ease of use, integration. We want to help students and faculty interact in many different ways. So one of the things that we built is incorporated into the BlackBoard Learn Ultra product is another solution that we call Collaborate Ultra. And basically, while the course helps us with asynchronous communication, discussion posts, like post something and then I come back the other day and read and all that stuff. Sometimes we want more face-to-face or more real-time interaction. So every time a course is created in Blackboard, automatically a virtual classroom is created for the course. And students and faculty can access this on the left side. So you can see here the join session link, and there's a course room right there. When I click on the course room, that will launch the synchronous environment in my browser without having to download any additional software. Okay? So I don't have to install anything. The room is empty because I'm the only one in my course right now, but this system will let me share video. So high definition video, audio. It lets me share my, I can have a whiteboard, do some annotation in there. I can share files. One thing that I like about this is that once I upload a file, like this Jupyter image, it will stay in there. So if you have something, a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that you use constantly, or if you're teaching science or math or something, and you want, a chart or a plot or something to start, you can always just drag and drop that in there, and it will remain in the session as long as that course is open. You can always have that like in your toolbox and just bring it on over, just like this image. And then once it's uploaded into the system, it just basically becomes part of the whiteboard. So you can use that for annotations. You can share an application. You can share the entire screen, or let's say, let me maximize this one right here. So I can say, okay, I'm going to share my students my phone screen. So they are now going to look into that. Now this becomes really handy when we want to record, let's say a capsule or a bit of a lecture or something that we want to show our students. So on the top left side of the screen, I can just click start recording. That will start recording everything I say, all the video, everything that I'm sharing in here, all the things that are in the chats, right? Oh, no, it's for, okay, sorry about that. So I will record everything, and once I'm done, right, I can just either close the session, just basically close that browser window, or click stop recording. That recording will automatically be appended into the course. So students can come in here, look at the recordings, and they'll see a list of everything that we've recorded in there. Now, these videos, they can be referenced like this inside the course. They can also be downloaded as MP4 files that students can use their phones to view or reproduce. Or you can also copy that link and use that, send it over email, post it in all your courses, use that video, for anything that you find useful. Now, because this tool has been built for education, it has, you can create some polling, so you can basically ask questions of students, gauge their knowledge about a topic, or just basically make sure that they're not asleep on the other side of the internet. So every time they answer, you'll get a sense of how they're understanding the topic. You can create breakout groups. So when you create breakout groups, students will go into their own individual areas, they can work, collaborate, and then you can bring them all back into the main room and, have a discussion. So all those features, again, are built in the browser, no extra software needed. And if they're on the phone, they can use the BlackBoard application that I showed a few moments ago to interact with the session. Yes.
Okay, so this is a cool feature. Can you, like, you have the picture of users that was a saved file. If you make notes on that, does that update that file then and become a resource for students?
It does not update the file. So the recording will have those annotations, but the file remains as is. So once you stop sharing that, it will go away.
So you could record it.
You can,
Then you
yes.
would have the file.
Not the file, you could have video, not a file.
Right. And so once you have, is the only way to access those recordings is through that record feature? Or can you move your files, you can copy?
Yeah. So if you go into the view recordings area of the course, you'll see all of the recordings that are here, right? And you can either access it directly from here, from the system, or you can copy the link. And everyone you send that link to will have access to the software. Now, I have selected to not enable downloads. That is something that you as an instructor, you can decide, and you can go in and select that for that session, you can actually download the MP4 format. So that's something different. So it's up to
could
you.
you take the link and copy it into like assigned directions?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Now for assignment directions, we're working on adding webcam video directly into the directions, so you don't have to go and kind of do all that shuffling.
Quick question, like, this was the polling stuff.
Yes,
I'm just trying to understand, like, we had a snow day.
correct, yes.
And so, like, it would have been nice to be able to, like, be like, hey, everybody get online for 15 minutes, let's talk about a product real quick or whatever. Yeah. I mean, if it's a snow day, school sport, you can't make your students get online. Okay. I mean, well, and that's fine, you don't have to, but I mean, just trying to get days that we're not on campus all the time. Like, to be like, can they ask you questions? Like, if you're doing the synchronous kind of environment and talking and you're lecturing or whatever, and they had a question about, well, how big is that spot on your, and you'd be like, oh, okay, I need to go back to that, like, is it a two-way street?
It is,
or-
definitely. So all students can access their microphones. Of course, you can mute them if you want to. They can all have access to video. They can all, whenever someone is participating in a session, so students can raise their hand. That will notify you as a moderator that the student has raised, his or her hand. And if there's more than one student, you will have the order in which they raise their hand, so you can go over the questions. Now they can participate on the chat, or they can use their microphone. So it depends on how they want to interact. Most students like to text quite a bit, so the chat is one major way of communicating with them. Now the system already has that, as I said before, the course room is created every time you log in, every time a course is created for you. But if you want to create a new session for a specific snow day, or you can create a room anytime you want. So you go into the view all sessions window. Now in the previous session this morning, someone was talking about a study group. So a place in which students can come in and kind of collaborate with each other without having to travel into campus. So I can do the same example. So I can create a session, I can call it study group. This one has no end, so it's open always. And I can let everyone who's logging in to be a presenter. So that basically allows them to share, share their screen, use the whiteboard and all that stuff. They can't boot each other out of the session. So it has some privileges, but it doesn't have all. So this is a good setting for students, right? Here is where I can allow recording downloads. I can actually anonymize chat messages if I want to. Several items in here I can set up so that participants can share video and audio. I can kind of configure how I want the interaction to take place, and then click save. And that link that's being created right there will be accessible here, right? Now, in addition, every time you create a group assignment, students will have access to a group collaborate session that they can always click on and collaborate online. So if they have a group assignment, it might be the first time they're working together, they don't have all of each other's, contact information and whatnot. They can just say, hey, let's meet in the collaborate room. Everyone has access to it. They all have access to the system. They click on it and they can use their phones or whatever, and they can all collaborate together. So that's the idea. And as you can see, all of the systems, the mobile application, the mobile experience, the browser experience, the cloud, everything looks like it's the same system. For them, I mean, that's how it's supposed to look. Everything is seamless and integrated, right?
One more question.
Sure.
So can that be used as a presentation tool where students collaborate and then share their PowerPoint and record it?
Definitely, yes. Yes. Okay. So there are several ways in which you can accomplish this. You can have just one room for everyone, or you can have a room for groups, or you can have a room in which all students can come in, record their presentation, and then you'll have all the recordings for the students, right? So lots of things to do. Yes. Now, a bit below that course room experience that we just saw is the attendance tracking feature, right? So that is built in directly into the system. When I click attendance, I did this earlier today, so I have already marked attendance for my students. But when I click on that, automatically a new attendance session is created for the day in which I click on that link. So you don't have to go ahead and create all the attendance records in your course. They will be automatically created as you go along, and you can set everyone present at first, right? And then just mark those students that were late, the ones that were absent, and the ones that actually have a justification for coming in class. You can see that on the left, they're actually getting grades for this because that's how I configure this. I can change the schema, so I have present, late, and absent, and I can have different percentage points depending on how I want to manage that, or I can just use a letter, points, whatever. Now, every time I do this, it will add into the overall attendance tracking for the course. I have several this year so far. And on the left side, I have the overall attendance grade for a particular student. This goes directly into the gradebook and can be used for gradebook calculations and final grade. Yes, you can. I mean, that is up to you. You define how that, you can take attendance and have no consequence in grades. That's perfect. Yeah. You can also go into the schema and just basically add a 1 and a 0 or a 0. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, you decide how the final grades calculate. Yes. I like that question because I get that all the time. So it will give you automatic attendance. Yes. Yeah. So they came in and they're there. And now you do have, some reports on, how students actually participated. So for the study group, unfortunately, well, nothing has happened, right? But you can get some information here. Okay, so let me look at the reports. I might have something. So again, very limited sessions, but let's look at this one. Looks like I actually did something. So no, it was only me. But you have the first join. So if you have more detailed information, you can go into that report. You can see how they're interacted. You can actually print this one. But we can set attendance automatically for sessions that happen. Any questions on that? All good? Okay. So let me go back into content management, right? So I'm going into my solar system unit here. So I already shared with you how I can just basically drag and drop a file or a folder and add that to the course. But what happens if I want to create new content, right? So let's see what I have in here. So let me open this Jupyter document. So I have some text, an image, and a video that I want to upload, right? So again, typical day creating a course. So I want to go here, create. Oh, did I click on that? There you go. I want to create a document, right? So this lets me upload content from computer, add text. Oh, I don't like what happened. So I'm going to select this, basically copy that, and then I'm going to add text. Basically pasted that into the system. This is a visual text box editor. I can change the style of the text, make it bigger. I can, as you would expect, use make that font bold. Okay, what's that? I also can do some mathematical notation here. So this will bring in my math editor. I can also add, chemical reactions and all that, nice stuff if I wanted to, but it's been a while. So I'm not going to do. I can add links, images, videos, and I can also add content for what we call the content market. So the content market is for a way to connect faculty with resources from third-party vendors. So some of them might have been configured by your system administrator already. So it's just about going into Cengage or Drawhill or something like that, selecting the content and adding that as a link into your content area. Or you can configure that from a list of available providers here on top. Or if you wanted, if you have one that's really not available here, you can always add just a link to that resource and add the appropriate credentials to add that resource. Now, sorry about that. If I want to add a file, or let's say that I want to add that file as an attachment, again, drag and drop. I want to also add an image of Jupyter, just drag and drop that in there. What else do I have in here? I want to add video here. Again, just drag and drop. So notice that whenever I click on something, you see that kind of slide in animation, right? So what that means is that when I click on something in the course, anywhere in the system, it is not changing my web page. I'm not going anywhere else. Just basically bringing that page into the same environment. If I click on the left, you'll see the places where I've been, right? So everything that's slid in. So this is where I started. This is the course. Now this is the item that I added. If I click on that, it's going to slide that out and take me back. So the idea is that I don't want my students and my faculty to lose their way around the system. Every time you click on something, it will slide in, and there's a limit to how deep you can go, so that you don't have a clutter of sliding windows. But the idea is that you always know where you are in the system. You don't have to be digging into folder against folder inside the system. Let's look into the assignment. So as an instructor, I can click on the assignment there. It's going to give me basically the configuration or the settings that I've selected for that assignment, which I will go into in a minute. But I can also go into the submissions by my students. So actually, there's a submission here by Mark. So actually, he has two. So let me go into the first one. Okay. So I can, sorry about that again. I can preview the file here directly in the system, right? I can add some comments as feedback into that document. Being nasty here with my students. And you can see on the right that I have a Safe Assign originality report. So this is similar to Turnitin. This Safe Assign system is built into Blackboard and it's part of our core offering. So you don't necessarily have to buy an extra software, but this one is telling me that this is actually 100% matched with someone else. If I click on the report, it's going to take me into the report for the student. Let me make this a bit bigger, right? So you can see here that some of the paper has been submitted, you know, it was another student paper. Some of them comes from the internet, right? So in this case, I think the student is pretty much, yeah, he's not having a good time this weekend. So now in this case, of course, it's 100% because I've used this file and of course I did not write all of this. I just copy and paste it from the internet. But every time you create an assignment, you can select whether or not you want that to automatically be submitted into the originality report. And we can use Safe Assign in assignments. We can use it in tests. And soon we'll have it in discussion posts as well. So if a student is writing, you know, yeah, this is what Jupyter is like, then you can right away see if it's from Wikipedia or not. Now, let me go back into grading. So, okay, let's say that, okay, high risk, that's fine. Let me go and grade. So I click on the rubric, right? So that rubric is right again, side by side with my paper here on the left. So rubric is automatically calculated. So it has several criteria in there. Satisfactory, excellent, excellent, satisfactory, and automatically I already, you know, graded that student. I can then, of course, add, apart from the comments that I pasted into the document itself, I can add more feedback. This is a full-fledged editor, so I can, you know, be very colorful about my feedback. I can also insert media. I can add audio, video in there as part of my feedback to students. And that's a grading workflow for assignments. When I'm done with Mark, I just click on Trish, and then that takes me to the next assignment. And this one is a 52%, so she's not that bad. Then again, you know, that's up to me to interpret, right? So again, I never lose my spot. Let me go back into my course. So I will slide out of the way. And actually, I want to go deeper. Okay, so let's look into a discussion forum. Okay, so I have a graded discussion, astronomy in the news. I'm going to click in the astronomy section, astronomy discussion board. So I have all the discussions. This morning I went through this, so there's no new messages for me, but I can focus on students by looking at the list on the right side. So let me look at what Alex said. That automatically highlights all of Alex's contributions to the discussion forum. Also, it gives me a bit of context out there about what's going on. These are a bit of you know, configuration settings. I can set a due date. I can also, whenever I create a discussion forum, I can have it so that students have to post first before they can collaborate in the discussion forum. For grades, again, just click here on top. It will slide in. I can see all the different items posted by my students. If I click on Mark, it's going to highlight Mark's contributions into the discussion forum. And I can grade that here on top, and I can say 80. And I can add my feedback right here next to his contributions. So let me close that. Now, it will not post the grade back to my student until I decide to post it back. So I can either click there or I can go grade. Once I'm done, I just click post all of them back to students. All at once.
Can you go into more detail about rubrics?
What do you want to know about rubrics?
The capabilities, like could you use a rubric on a discussion board?
Right now, it is not. We're building so we can use rubrics in test questions, and we can use it in assignments. The reason why it's not in discussion forums right now is because we removed it, and we're building an automated rubric so that you can set parameters like the student has to submit 5 posts, and it will automatically add that criterion or grade that. You can set word count and things that automatically will create that rubric, but it will be the same mechanics.
And so then what other formats, I guess, right now, and I know it's basically the same, but just different names.
Yeah.
But right now we have, set rubric where you say this category is 10 points, or we can set it with a point range.
Correct. Okay.
Checklists.
Yeah, so I will create a new assignment and add a rubric to that to see how it works. Okay, so I'm going to create an assessment assignment. So I'm gonna leave everything as is, and I'm gonna move that, but I'm gonna click on rubric. Okay, so click add grading rubric. So I can select one that's already created. So I have a couple of them. So if I want to check that one out, I can click on view, right? And I can see the criteria, levels of achievement, and I can create a copy. So I can do that. So it's a Astronomy rubric copy, right? And right now, I have percentages, so I can change and modify those. Now let me discard that one. Let me create a new one. And as you can see, it automatically creates that range, but you can delete any of those ranges and also the criteria. Right now, it only so I will rebalance that. So it only has a percentage point for each one of those categories. We are working on ranges and just point mark.
Right, so you can't have a range in any category. Like in excellent, it's not like 23 to 25 in it.
No, not just yet. Yeah, so if you choose this one, it will mark 100%, and if you choose this one, it will give 75% of the overall score that you've set for that.
Do you guys typically delineate that finally rubric achievement?
I'm sorry, I didn't first part.
Do you typically delineate achievement into a percentage within a band?
Well, I grade it. I think everybody does it differently. And so sometimes I'd like to be able to choose, I like to be able to have the whole range available to me. Because it's like, well, you're close, but you're not, satisfactory.
Yeah, I totally get it. And you can always use the rubric to grade. The rubric will automatically set a number of points in there. But if you want to modify that, you can do that.
We show that scoring of rubric.
Yeah, so you can, let's say the rubric gives you a 68 over 100, and you might be feeling, okay, or you want to give the student the 70%, so you can just add those points. You can just click and modify that. So it gives you an automatic grade, but it's not set in stone. You can always change that. To a certain extent, that kind of works in there, but I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I have a question then. If
Yes.
we have rubrics built in Moodle,
Yes.
will how will we import or copy?
So as long as the rubric is in the same format as we're using, so if you have a rubric that, like for instance, has a range, we don't have a range format, so it will not import that rubric. Now, this is the time where I explain the thing about moving from one LMS to another. Okay, so we have conversion tools. Moodle Rooms is a BlackBoard offering, so they're cousins, right? They're not brothers, they're cousins. So we do have a way to import courses and course content. Now, each LMS has a different way of implementing certain features. Some LMSs offer certain features, others don't, which is natural. We get to probably an 80% of content that can be converted. However, every time there's a move from one LMS to another, regardless of what people like me say, there's always work that faculty have to do, right? Sometimes the tools are not implemented in the same way. Sometimes we have things in there that can go under the radar, like you go into the assignment, it says, go into your assignment section and click on this area so that you can submit. Well, all of that text is no longer usable because there's no longer an assignment section, right? So you have to go in and look into the content and basically change it. So be wary of the 80-20%. And just like the 80-20% rule, the 20% can actually end up costing quite a bit in terms of time from you converting a person. Does that make sense? So even if you move from Moodle Rooms into BlackBoard, we will do our very best to convert all your courses into the BlackBoard Learn Ultra interface, but that does not mean that faculty will not have to go in and do some work. Now, is it worth it? Maybe for Ultra? Probably.
Question on due dates. So, like when we say we teach the same course every semester.
Correct.
We have, there was another program that came and talked about their due dates, they shift the due dates to the next semester. So you do not have to re-put in
Correct.
due dates unless of course you can get a holiday or something shifted.
So I had that question. I don't know if you brought it up. Thank you, Jake. So we have that functionality, but it's still in the background. It has not surfaced into the interface. Let me go into the gradebook so you have a sense of where we're going with this.
So by that, we would say that our normal product that's not cloud-based and is this new design has been doing that for years.
Okay.
And you could do, move it day one to day one, and so naturally, all your stuff's always due on day 7 or week 1 because it's Sunday, and so we just reset Sundays.
Okay.
Or you could do plus 50 or plus 270 days, whatever that is, Monday to Monday. We've been doing that for a long time there. As we rebuild this one, that will be, like, I would say with you guys are very likely level of confidence by the time you guys were to move this, which would be July 19 next year, that you would have a much higher level of control for that. Right now it's a little manual, we can show you the process, but that's something that we. Yeah.
You're going into semesters?
Yeah, they're making
From 5 weeks?
quarters. Yeah.
From quarters to
So
semesters?
they're just ripping off panties, which is fine. They need to be ripped off anyways. I mean,
So I assume at some point you were semester based and then you went to.
I think we.
Always quarters.
You've always been quarters?
Since I came to school.
All
split.
Yeah.
Because 10 years ago there was this big movement towards like smaller terms, and everyone was trying to do that, and it's such a headache. But anyway,
My alma mater went the other way. A bunch of people quarter hours.
depends on where you're coming from, right? So this is the one view of our gradebook. So the gradebook, you can either look at it from an activity list perspective, or you can look at it in a grade view. Grid view. Takes a while there. Okay, so that's the grid view, all the activities, right? So what we're working on right now is to surface that functionality that we have in the background, like Jake described, so that we can go in here and basically change those dates by just clicking those and like say select 1, 2, or 3 or more or all of them and say shift them all over like 5 days or shift the due date. Now, if you want to change the date right now, there are several ways in which you can do that. You can either select it from here, click edit. That will take you into the activity directly and just click the date and change it, right? So you can change that date in there. Or no, I don't want to change anything. Or you can go into the group view, which is my preferred way of doing it. So I select the group assignment here on top, click edit, same thing, takes me into the assignment settings. Or you can, depending on how much you want to shift those dates, you can you can just go and drag and drop that and change the I'm sorry, in the calendar, right? So you can, depending on how many, if you're going to shift it like 2 days or hours.
Shift it from like this spot, or you shift it to this spot, or is that- we get that one?
No, you got to get to that one. Yeah. So those things are, yeah, you cannot drag and drop it yet.
It's kind of hard to hit an hour, or if you're doing something specific today, an hour you could track days really easy in a month.
Right.
Or within, so we're thinking from a usability standpoint. I think really you only do this like typically the setup of your class, right? Like you get ready for the semester and you're like, what are all my dates? And then you spot check on them, and then do stuff, you'll kind of add incrementally. What you really want to do is have the setup for your semester really fast and not a lot of work.
Right.
And so I think if we bring this tool from our other LMS, the non-cloud one, to this, which is, then that makes that really easy. We can show that, but that's fine.
I'll just be happy if it doesn't flip into the back year.
Yeah.
Well, so
Welcome to
don't
2014.
be 2016 again.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I can talk about some extreme examples. I've had schools that within faculty decided not to add any due dates to the system because it was too much for them. So they're just basically hand students a page, like a printout, a PDF, where they have the dates for the assignment, which probably works for the faculty member quite well, but the student has to be taking out that paper every time. What do I have to do?
Yeah.
Which is nice, but.
Correct.
Calendar feature that students can do see, if I just do, on Thursday, if I look at snapshot of the calendar.
Oh yeah, so I'll do that. So I can sign out here as an instructor, just so you have like a view. I say students. So again, same interface. In this case, I have an overdue assignment, so it's important all the way to the top. Messages, all that stuff. Actually, the system is saying that I'm doing great in one of my courses. But if I go into the calendar view, I have a unified view of all my different courses, all the courses I'm taking. All the dots represent activities. If I go into the due date view, I have all of those assignments. If I want to take this test, click on the test, right? Actually took it, but I can start another attempt. Start the timer. And I can participate in those activities directly from my due dates view. So it takes about 8 seconds for light to come from the sun to reach here. Anyone? Want to guess?
How many seconds?
No, what? How long? No time. 8 seconds. 8 minutes. Less than 2 seconds.
I get this. I like it. Yeah. I'm like, great.
I'm gonna go with 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So okay. As I go along, every time I click on something, notice that it's not asking me to save anything. Every time I click on something, it automatically saves, right? So I did not go into all the other ones. I'm just gonna click submit. Let's see if I was right, guys.
That you were at your demo.
Oh yeah, I built that exam. Sorry, I cheated. So yes,
Speaking of exams.
yes.
We do exams very specifically to non-banklets. So we have question per page, inability to go back. Like once a question got answered, then it was on the next one. Shuffling questions, shuffling stuff.
Question pooling.
Yeah, well, yeah, like they got randomized A through C or A through C.
Oh,
Shuffle in the
Do you
question.
do negative grading?
Huh?
Do you do negative grading where you say like if you select the wrong answer, then you take points away from you?
Only if it's, and then we have to select all the five, and so that one does, if you're
Okay.
all correct or all incorrect. And clicks doesn't do that.
You're like, but his pupils didn't dilate, he's like, yeah, big guy.
Yeah. There's really no middle ground, but.
By the way, I just knew this, what was I watching? Last week, what is the most trusted profession in the world? Nursing. Yeah. The only time when it changed,
President's right behind you.
Yeah.
the only time when it changed, it was after 9/11, so after 2002, it was firefighters. Yeah. And then it went back because everyone realized nurses are
All healthcare data.
That was cool. I like those small facts. Anyway, so I'm back as an instructor. Let me go into create a test. We unfortunately don't have all of the features. So what we try to do, building this new interface, like basically from scratch, based on our previous technology, without having faculty to recreate the courses, was to only add functionality that was used and that really provides value. So one of the things that we tried to move away, which was really difficult for us to do because we were not built like that as a company, was to, instead of saying yes to every request, we wanted to look into like whether or not what was used. Now, tests are very important, so we have been adding a lot of functionality behind tests, but mainly that's the reason why some of the question types we haven't added. So I guess it's a great example, question types. So we have millions of users using our system. So we were able to analyze just basically how tests were being used across the world. 94% of the questions in those tests were basically true or false, open-ended, multiple choice, and multiple answer. We have 18 different types of questions, right?
20 in Moodle.
20 in Moodle. So the issue here is that whether, yes, all of those questions are nice, they're all important and relevant. However, is it worth it to have 20 different question types when most of those, 80% or 90% of those, are only going to be used, in one course, 2 courses? It creates a lot of noise for the rest of faculty, right? So that's how we started. We're not saying that we're never going to build all those question types. Ultimately, we might end up doing it, but we want to do it in a way that does not add extra complexity to faculty. Does that make sense?
When we launched, I think we had 3. I think we had like true, false, multiple choice, blank or something. And then we added 3 more, and then we added 3 more, and we added 3 like, so that's kind of in the progression. But yeah.
So we have, okay. So what we have right now is multiple choice that can be multiple answer. True or false, and essay. We're adding very soon, next couple of months. Very, very soon, the next couple of months, we're adding fill in the blanks and matching. Any other that you would like to have in here?
Oh, man, I would love hotspots.
That's the thing for medical profession,
And
medical
that's
field,
big.
hotspots are
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So can we tell you a secret we told anybody else? We do everything. Like our core product does everything, every question type, every iteration. It's just 20 years old.
Yeah.
And it's like anything you ever wanted is in the core of our product. It's not this experience, it's in core. As a client, if you have a segment of your population that's like, this is sexy and this is awesome, I love this, but I don't really eat hot spots, whatever. We can provide a mixed experience. Like for nursing, you have the same look. Actually, the theme is very similar. But you could be on the standard stack and on the old stack. You could have all that stuff. It's up to your institution how you deploy. That's what we call dual deploy, in which you can have either experience and providing them in there. And 95% of your classes and most of your
Are going to be this.
Wouldn't care. But maybe for nursing, maybe for something else.
High stakes testing.
Yeah, maybe you're like, more important for us to be able to do hotspots and NCLEX 1 question per page style and A and B.
than this. We didn't mention that, 'cause we don't want to like confuse your muddy waters, but
So
what's great about us is you have the flexibility to do that. Nobody else.
schedule management, shifting the dates, all the, like, the 20 different types, the 18 different types, we do have it. But like Jake said, we do not want to go into that conversation. I like to call it standard and advanced.
So the advanced, you would have still all the ultra synchronous classes.
You would have, yes, you would have the stream, you have
Yeah.
all
It
those.
looks very similar.
It looks very similar, but it does have a way lot more options, so that, no, it's the same product.
It
Okay.
costs you $1 to switch from A to B, doesn't cost you, it's not hard, it's actually the easiest model. The other thing to keep in mind is, this will be a whole new world in a year. We've doubled our development team over the last 6 months, so we spend more on development than probably everybody else you have interviewed with together. So this is gonna be a very different product. Sucks you guys have to make a decision now, when you don't know what the world's gonna be like in a year, like you have to plan ahead.
That's the reality of
Technology,
everything.
we have no idea.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're like.
So in a way, it's a difficult conversation to have, but also I think an interesting one. What I like to do when I demonstrate the software like this is I'm telling, yes, that you can do this today, but I'm also talking about a philosophy behind the way.
I was gonna say, because I guess if you're talking about technology and we now we have to buy it now. I know we've bought products that by the time we get them and get them installed, they're already obsolete. So that's why, to me, I guess that's more important is what kind of support do you have?
Yeah.
What kind of support do you have for teachers learning and getting on to this?
Yes.
And where do you see the growth happening?
Yeah.
Because that, I honestly would rather be on the cutting edge side so that, in 10 years, we're just starting to get behind.
You don't wanna change again every 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
feel like I'd rather jump than try to take advantage.
Yeah, so this is like a great question. I love the way you asked this, I love the way you're thinking about this. Because you're trying to find somebody that is a good, that doesn't check the boxes, but like is a good partner for you long term and
Right.
where you want to be. And so some of the, like probably the people you have in the room or we'll have in the room have some good products. You're interviewing me very fast. It's not like really horrible LMS out there. What I like about us is that I'm not going to charge you to use A or B. Like if you want this one or the other one, whatever, we'll do whatever it takes. There's no license difference. I'm like no process or cost. We also have flexibility. Some schools want to self-host it, our other product, all right. Some people want private cloud, fine. Some people want it on Amazon, fine. A lot of the product is one option. And so to me, that speaks to like, which even it sucks for us because it's harder to support a lot of things. We put a lot of money and effort into doing a really good job at it. And then also we can show you that we're investing a lot more heavily in research and design than anyone else is. Which proofs in the pudding, so I think that's cool. And if you like the philosophy about how we're going about recreating learning experiences, I think that's a good proof point.
So one of the things that we have, one transformation that has already happened, and I was talking about this before the session started, is that having been in the education space for 20 years now, we started our software when the approach to software development is very different. So you have a problem, function, code it, that's it. Now the way that software is made is through thinking about the user experience first, designing experience, designing the interface, and then coding, right? So it creates a different workflow. So we have done that already. Now the next step is a bit more, not difficult to explain, but it's a bit more abstract, which is we're shifting from thinking about it from an LMS perspective, virtual classroom perspective, from a mobile application perspective. We don't want to look at those as different things, right? So as you can see now, all of them, they have the same look and feel, have the same experience, they're merged together. You don't have to think of really which one of the tools you're using. The student doesn't care, you don't care, right? So our approach is we want to look at a big picture use case. What do you want to do with it? You want to manage your teaching and learning process? Well, you don't need a LMS and a Zoom and whatever. You want an environment, right? You want something that will solve that challenge for you. So our approach is more comprehensive, approach to the problem, then let me sell you a hammer and then, screwdriver. That is not what we want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're telling us, you wanna sell us the whole toolbox.
Now, you can always turn on and off things that you don't want.
Right, you don't have to use everything,
Exactly.
but you've got all of that.
Exactly. Yes. Also, like what Jake was saying, we're not saying use this or that or that. I mean, we are very aware, keenly aware of the cost of change. So we don't want to present you guys with that kind of situation. So we want to, we want to make it easy. So a choice is based on the particular challenge that you guys want to have to go over or you want to solve. It's not about, oh, I like the red one or the green one, but it shouldn't be like that, right? So for us, I mean, we really want to keep you as a client. If you stay with Mood Rooms is going in a great direction, but it's the same, it's the same approach, right? It's within the same company. If you want to go with Learn, right? I mean, our approach is a comprehensive, cohesive learning environment that will grow with you. Does that make sense?
What's the support? What support do you guys give to the instructor as they're transitioning?
So we started with a question came up last night too. So we have a really great community. So one of the first things I want to know is like, what do you give me? How can I learn from my peers? Like how well is the community going? So BlackBoard is one of the oldest learning communities. There's regional groups. We call them clubs, BlackBoard user groups. We have a really large help.blackboard.com or instructor.blackboard.com, I think is the other one.
Community,
yeah, where we have like user videos and how-tos and support documents and connect with your peers. We support all of our clients with $0, like you don't pay anything for them resources. We call client success advocates. That their job is just to help you get adoption and stuff. So like they're like, help me do this better, help people get the most out of this. Or we bought a product that only like 10% of people are using, help us get 90% of people. When they call, they'll come here for your onboarding day, so they'll do calls, webinars with you. They're not going to conduct a formal training, so a trainer will pay for that. But it's really cool that we provide a resource. It's not like help me fix a help desk ticket, but they're like really successful, and that's all they do. And they're former teachers.
They come from the industry. They come from education. So for you, it would be Supers.
Yeah.
Who is from the Oklahoma Community College system, right? And she does. You can call it whatever you want to call it, but she does faculty engagement days. If you say, hey, this new term, we're going to go into how to transform from a quarterly, process into like 6 months. I want to know which challenges I have to overcome and how would that look like in terms of instructional design or like from course design perspective. And she can come have a chat with you about that. Or you can say, hey, I just wanted to talk about the new features in BlackBoard from a faculty perspective. And again, as Jake said, it is about, exposing faculty to the tools in a way that, makes sense for you. And it is not part of a formal engagement.
That's more ongoing. Like that's day to day when you're in the platform. But getting on board, we have everybody that migrates will do like migration services down the course. And we'll do like training the trainers. We'll bring your own instructional designers. You can keep active and understand. We'll train them and answer questions. And you have some key stakeholders from like maybe college or department. Or we go as far as like formal direct to faculty professional development. We have master teacher courses that we do. We have exemplary course like trainings that we provide where like we'll take one of your courses and one of your faculty, rebuild their stuff to meet all the excellent course standards, whether it's ours or somebody else's, and then come back and we'll do formal course reviews of your course if you're looking for like continual development courseware.
We have the MVP program, the exemplary course program. So that's really cool stuff.
To me, the biggest thing is your community, right? Like how is there really strong, stable user community? I would say we're really good at that. Some others are pretty good at that too, but I'd say we're really good at it. Moodle maybe, I don't know, is Moodle a harder community because it's so broad?
I wouldn't call it a harder community. The thing about Moodle, and this is my own personal perspective, is that it is implemented very different ways. There's very different flavors of Moodle and different versions of Moodle. So even if two, institutions are side by side, across the street, their experiences might be very different because, they have configured in a very different way. So there can be some exchange, but it's not exactly the same situation. Also, Moodle, I think it's great. I like it, but it's still a bit, 1990s. I shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah, I think they're very different. So I bought a motorcycle this year. Never owned a motorcycle.
He's always showing off. I apologize.
No, I probably want a motorcycle. I never had a motorcycle. It's not a nice motorcycle. But like, I didn't own a motorcycle. So I was like, but I figured it out, right? They're very different. I was like, oh, it's a sport bike. And I was like, I'm not a sport bike guy. And they're like, oh, this is this kind. Oh, this is good. So they're all great. They're all fun. They're good. Like, but you have to kind of figure out what motorcycle you guys want as an institution or for your students. Pick it. A lot of good stuff out there.
Yes.
How easy is it for me to do my own stuff and not have to rely on instructors?
Super easy unless you want to do something special.
Are there any instructional designers in here?
Yeah, what do you
Yes.
do?
Sorry, I like to do my stuff at like 2 in the morning, so.
I would
Instructional
say,
designers not awake at that time.
I don't think instructional designers want to help you do stuff that you can do on your own. I think what they want to do is sit down and help you improve teaching and learning, how to do best practices. So if we do our job well, you're not going down for stuff they don't want to do anyway, which is like, I can't get a test to show up, or I gotta move, they're like, that's not, I didn't go to school to help you create a test. I can help you do really powerful, awesome learning. That's how they want to engage it.
so I'm going to say from the technology perspective, I've worked with instructional designers for quite a while. And when we go over Ultra, because if you contrast Ultra with other traditional LMS interfaces, it is a lot easier to work with. Now, what I realized, or what people are realizing, is that a lot of the instructional design work, instead of focusing it on how to create more engaging activities and learning, a lot of the time was spent on just managing the interface. Like, how do I add a discussion? How do I add this? So that is taking away from the value of the instructional designer, right? It was more like technical support in a way. And with our approach, at least what we want to accomplish is simplify the tool as much as we can so that the instructional designer, if you need it, is more about, hey, so how can I be sure that I'm actually assessing for the type of knowledge or the type of competency that I want to develop, right? And that is a whole different conversation than, well, you go in the grade center and add a column and do this, you know what I mean? So moving away from the technology, get this out of the way and just focus on education. So that's my take on it. So will you need it? Probably not. But if you do need it, then the focus will be on something different. Does that make sense? There you go. So that's why I'm trying to make sure that instructional design is I've had some instructional designers react very negatively because in some instances, so BlackBoard, the previous version of BlackBoard, again, very powerful, menus, lots of menus. And they spent quite a bit of time working on those menus and just making sure those menus are consistent. So a lot of work, and then you come in and then you take away the menus and they're like, what? Yeah. So several reactions.
Let me get a chance to go or to go later. Go back to your classroom, like
Sure.
class itself. Like, to me, when I look, like the course content, I'm trying to think of, like, how would that look? Because that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so how do you, like, we have, like, one thing I like about Moodle is the collapsible.
Yes. So you can either,
And then entire semester.
yeah.
So like that, like it would just be over.
So if you have a semester, for instance, so I like to think of semesters as
big chunks, right? So you can have first 2 months, then second 2 months. So you can have 3 major tabs. So you can grab one of these and basically, let's say, deposit that inside one of the folders. So it's just drag and drop. So you can have folders inside folders, right? So inside the solar system, I have other, so you can either inside the folder, you can have weeks or units or modules, depending on how you want to organize it. So originally we started with only 2 levels of organization, but we ended up adding, many more because sometimes you need to atomize things or, have different levels of aggregation in there. So that would be one way to do it. So organizing through folders. Now everything, whenever you come in, it's always collapsed, right? Now we come from a different perspective. So while originally, so when courses were designed or when we think about creating a course, I think we go to what we are very familiar with. So books, book chapters, we follow a linear pattern, content, review, activity, assessment, and then we go on. So it follows that kind of progression. So courses look a lot like that. But ultimately, students don't interact with the course in that particular way. Not even with the textbook, right? They will go to the chapter they want, they will look into that, and they will go back and they look into the other. So the stream, to a certain extent, takes care of that. So anywhere where activity is going on in the course, that's what's going to show up in the stream, right? So that will help point students in the right direction where things are happening, where the action is. But inside the course, you can organize with different folders. You can name those whatever you want. In this case, solar systems, you can change that into units, weeks, modules, months, whatever. Now, another thing, and I don't know if I shared this before, but you can always show and hide content on dates, right? So what I like to recommend is to show when the date is there and not hide, because once you go through content, you want to be able to go back to that content as a student, right? But you can also make content available based on performance or things that are happening in the course. So once the student goes through a particular threshold, then make the next content available. So that again, when they come in, they don't see that whole bunch of things they have to do. So they come in, they can see the first week, these are the things there. They go through the assessment, they're ready to go, then the next things start popping up. Now, you can automate that. I found that a lot of faculty members don't like to automate courses because it does involve you going in and manipulating the dates and all that stuff. I totally get it, but I also come from software, development. So every hour you spend in design are basically 4 hours that you save when you're actually coding the system. So as an instructor, every hour you spend designing your course is going to save you time when you're actually teaching it. But again, that's where instructional designers come in and help you out on, course organization. But we moved away from menus and different windows and pages that pop up in some other. Hopefully that will help you organize your course.
You guys organize around weeks for a lot of rushing content?
We're concept based.
Okay.
So we do concept. So I teach elimination, perfusion, so usually we figure it out the concept and then the lecture. So I keep
So you have 8 concepts. Now, I guess that's a good example. Let's say that you have a week worth of content and you have 4 different concepts. They're not necessarily tied to a day. And you don't want necessarily for them to necessarily go through them in a step-by-step way. You can have 4 folders with all the supporting content in there, and you can have 2 or 3 activities. They're tied to a due date. But the student doesn't have to go through the content to look at the due dates. They are in the due date section. They are in the stream, and they will be organized by due date. So you don't have to think about the time organization inside your content. You think about how content works together, regardless of time. Right? So again, I think it frees us from that, step by step.
I can't remember which elements is, and I probably shouldn't name them anyway, but that's a great question because often the structure is fixed. So I've seen some products where you just can't rename stuff, like you couldn't make it units or weeks or concepts. It just is the structure is. So it forces a little bit more change as you adapt your teaching to the tool, rather than the tool adapting to how you guys want to present it. So it's a good question to ask. If you guys haven't always asked that, it'd be good. How it can adapt it.
Like trying to think, like I look at this and I'm like trying to imagine my course in it. And
Yes.
For 15 weeks.
15 folders might be
Yeah.
probably too much.
Like, that's gonna be a lot.
Yeah.
But, that doesn't mean we'll have to redesign our curriculum.
So some LMSs out there, they think in terms of modules, so every time you have to create a module and then this module and this module. But again, I use the same example. I mean, I went through my undergrad and then my master's. I never read a textbook from cover to cover,
Right.
following the actual page number. No one does that. I won't do module 1 and module 2 unless I'm doing some sort of training, right? Which is okay, but I want to be able to go into the content where I see it, and if I have to do something, I'll do it for that particular day. But modularizing everything is not necessarily the best way to go, and we don't want to restrict. You're right. So
I think it's kind of an interesting conversation when you're teaching courses where students are very focused on sort of their major classes. And I teach more of sort of a gen ed class where students have full because they hate it, they don't want to be there, but they need that class. So
correct.
I think I don't know, I agree that with people
Like that would be
but
like,
I don't know how I can add those into the spot to
Yeah.
figure out how I can.
fun, we bundle up concepts. So say we do homeostasis, that's one folder, and then we have 3 folders under that.
Yeah.
Fusion, gas exchange, and food and electrolytes. I mean, we can do it. It's
And there's 3 areas to focus on.
right, and so I'm, looking at that. It's just interesting to try and rethink how to do it and do it effectively. I guess that's my big push is I want to do online teaching. I want to do it well.
Of course.
Right now, we suck at it. So
Oh.
I want to do it well and effective. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Here's something picking up with the well.
Is trying to do it better.
Yeah.
Rather than just do it more.
So there's things like you mentioned earlier, the snow day, right? That
Right.
School's out, where we go back to collaborate, you could have done the whole presentation, saved the link, pushed out and said, hey, no school today, but here's a link to the presentation.
Right,
You need to
exactly.
watch this before we come back tomorrow.
Right, and that's what we had, because like we had to go to simulation today,
And they came
now
in,
students haven't
yeah.
assessed on anything. And so I'm like, oh, or they had a test group that day, and now they're gonna have to go take the test with no test review because we can't have time. So that's kind of what I was like, I could easily click into that and be like, okay, if you wanna come in here, you can, or ask me test questions, it's not required.
Yeah.
Because it's a snow day, but I'm here. Or I record something for 20 minutes at home in my PJs and say, hey guys, hope you're enjoying
Turn the
snow
video
day.
off.
Here's this awesome,
So you're the one that does all the offsite grading for the nurses. They were talking about this yesterday, all the clinicals. That's what-
They were talking about taking participation. How do you account for them being there and doing what they need to do in their house, for the class?
in their clinicals right now, clinical for us isn't graded, it's part of the course.
Is it there or not?
They're there or not, and if they're not there,
Okay.
then they have, it's due for their hours. But I think we'll be a semester. And so then, yeah, the attendance becomes really important.
It is.
Giving point and like giving points for attendance, like in lab and
Yeah.
stuff like that would be really nice.
So I brought this up because we were talking about it yesterday with the mobile app and the mobile instruction, that you can easily go in there, do grading and everything, send feedback off your cell phone, right? They're right there. You're working with them and you can instantly put in a grade
Okay.
all that
That's really
off that app.
And
especially too, and then like, because I have instructors, so trying to communicate with them, who was there, who wasn't there, they can just go through. here, and it's almost every day.
Your students are probably more likely to be, more likely to be dependent upon a mobile device as it relates to their curriculum, because there's all over the place, right? There's so many things, clinicals and this
Right.
class. Maybe mobile is a little bit more important than the average Facebook obsessed.
We try.
I like that in most situations, I would say, if not all, most situations where I'm in front of faculty like today, there's always someone from the nursing department participating, and usually they have the most interesting use cases. We have UT Dallas, right? They have a big nursing program. Part of it is completely online. They have 20,000 students now. It's crazy. Crazy.
I don't know how you afford to teach that many nurses.
Well, that must be like
That's health
a
science.
AN to BSN program or something where they don't have to.
But
Yeah.
also,
Yeah, because you don't want your.
No, I'm sorry,
brand new
all the
undergraduates that never touched
all the
patients.
nursing programs put together. No.
yeah.
But also in Texas, going back into the whole Snow Day conversation, Lamar State University, one of our clients, they're right next to the Gulf. They are right next to the biggest refinery in the Western Hemisphere, and it was crazy there, and they couldn't open the campus at all. I mean, students couldn't get there. So we helped them through Collaborate and our student services to, just basically keep on operating, probably not at a full capacity and like what they would do on a normal day, but they were able to continue communicating with students, helping them out through the process.
What if, like, say, we have a lot of students that are out
Yes.
outside of Lincoln. So say Lincoln isn't closed down for the snow, we're fine, but, Omaha got hit, and we've got 5 students in Omaha that drive down.
Yeah.
And so they can't get out.
Yeah.
With the synchronous or the virtual classroom, and I turn it on, so I'm recording it in the classroom itself, and they can be watching from home where they're safe and not trying to drive the road. Because we get a lot of students that get real nervous, they're like, oh, I'm gonna miss a day. And I'm like,
Totally get
you're
it.
gonna kill yourself on the road, it's not worth coming.
I
But
saw,
they get so focused on, I need to be in class, I need to be in class.
yeah, I saw driving to Lincoln yesterday that the snow was like on the 3 sideways. So it was pretty bad. What I would do is just, if you're in a lecture and you happen to be in the campus at that moment, just turn on like I did, click on that, click record, and just give out the lecture like any other day. And those that can connect at that moment, they will look at it live, and those that cannot, because they were in between getting there from there or whatever, they can always look at the recording. So it's up to you. I mean, and you always have there, what I like about it is that you don't have to schedule it or create a link or send a link or have them come in there. You can just reference it, go to the classroom.
Yeah.
That's it.
You guys could use Zoom that you have now to do a lot of this stuff. The difference between Zoom and us is that it might be a little bit easier, it's closer, there's not clean feed. Although the LTI integration with Zoom is pretty good. The difference you'll see.
Zoom's not a bad product.
Yeah, the difference you'll see is that if you did use our product, it would be a little bit closer to the learning and not as like separate environment and stuff.
It's again what I was saying before about having different tools and then have them all work together. We see it all as a one challenge.
I do have a question
Sure.
from online. What does Blackboard offer for students to upload audio video recordings of their speeches?
So they can, there are many ways in which they can do that. So they can use their own software, in which case they can just upload their recording or the recordings of their presentations. Or you can set up a collaborate room in which they can come in, they can themselves record, and then just that recording will be automatically added to the course. Or you can create a room for a group of students or one for each student independently. So it depends on how you want to manage the workflow. Students can go in, record it, and then they can provide you the link as part of the assignment submission, or they can download the file and use that as part of the assignment submission. So it depends on them. Also, they can use their phones.
Which just
Speech mitigation.
Oh, nice.
is it, are students typically creating a file somewhere? And then the question is more like, how do they get them to us? They want to know how we can help them create the evidence, the video, the recording.
It was an email, so there's no
Not a lot of
Okay.
comments.
context besides the question.
They have to figure out a way to record themselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
So same, same answer. Use Zoom if you want. You guys love that. If you guys could decide to use one of our product Collaborate, then it works really well.
So-
Works from our mobile app, works on the web.
Can you share Zoom to your students? Can they use it on their own?
They bought a site license, so everybody has.
Oh, everyone has.
And we use a lot of,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great.
Filter.
like,
We have it.
we have a lot of students that like record themselves doing like digital assessment, and then they upload it.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that the easiest way to work with video for students is like through this. They can just record it with their phone. They have a camera with them at all moments, and they can use this and then upload it directly to the system.
That's how I would do it.
In there, the way that you can product your student, how much time is spent on assignments, or if you have video assignment, for instance,
A video assignment.
or it's not assignment, it's
Whether
say,
watching
I
a
want
video?
to watch it, but I need to see how much time they spend.
How would you measure that?
Oh, how much time they spend watching the video?
Yes.
Yeah, like with Office Mix, I can go through and look and see how long students actually think, oh, look, no wonder you found this exam, you spent 2 minutes on it.
Yeah. So each activity has its own activity reporting. So let's look first at the assignment, right? So if I go into the assignment, select student activity, I have an overall summary of grade distribution. You know, how many submissions on average, you know, how many students have a single submission, how many students have multiple submissions, then the time from start to finish. And this is when they start, if they type the assignment directly into the system, right? Sometimes they might just open it and just submit it as a document, which is okay. Now you can ask them to write the assignment directly in Blackboard. They will not probably like that, but you can have time from start to finish. Sometimes in assignments that might not be that relevant, but you have the same information for tests. So you go into a test and you look into, or I in this case, look into the student activity report. Now this is something I was talking to the group before, right? So let's look at the start to finish, 8 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
8 months. That got really through your hour.
8 months, sorry, yeah. So that's my
Permanent login.
demo user, yeah. So he's been working on this for a while.
Trying to get to 60, man. You gotta pump up this.
But
one.
you get a sense here. So let me zoom in here. Every time there's one of these marks, every time the student clicks on a question, every time the student moves into another question, every time the student, you get a timestamp. So you have a sense, all those marks represent activity of the student inside the test. So just by looking at this graphic, you can see, hey, a student has 90 or 100, and the student has basically, spent 2 minutes in the test. So there's something fishy going
Good friend.
right?
For both of them, we both got the same.
So
You can look, the good thing is you can look and say, hey, this one question took a really long time for students to answer. Maybe I need to review the question, maybe I need to review
he's
it.
looking at it from across the perspective.
Yeah, possible.
I always go into that. But yeah, so and I don't know if I mentioned this before in this session, but we're looking into surfacing information in a way that makes sense for you as instructors. So one good example is discussion forums. Discussion forums, usually what you get are word count, number of posts, things like that. But we're actually using machine learning algorithms that will give you the type of language that's being used, how participative is the student in it will suggest a grade based on all your other grades that you submitted. So it will say, well, based on how you grade students, this is probably an 85, right? It will not grade for you, but it will give you suggestions, and it will do writing analysis. So have you ever seen those reports they have on, some politician talking and just looking at how aggressive or how, divisive or how whatever.
Articulate.
Articulate.
Yeah. They can analyze social media.
What kind of language level? Exactly. So it will do that with all the discussion posts.
And it gives you a recommended, like, we think this is replace you,
Right.
but it could get you, like, reduce the amount of time you're spending on stuff, and highlight how it's making suggestions.
The way I look at it is like when students are taking a test in your classroom and you're like grading something out here and then you hear something, that's something that you get from being in the same place, kind of an input. In a system, you don't get that. So the system will try to find all those kind of spikes. Hey, there's something going on here, right? So it might not be a thing, but it's just.
What about like test pamphlet? Like
So-
question strength.
Like Pearson, reliability and all that stuff.
Well, and not even so much, like, when I look through an exam, and I can see, ooh, no one got this one.
The item analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or like
so-
an analysis, like, how many people passed that test question? Oh, then maybe I need to throw that one out, obviously, the wording wasn't right or something.
So that's another that's in the same category that we were talking
These are the core
before.
products.
So this is,
Because we have it in.
so we do have it here. It is again in the background because ultimately it's the same code base. It just hasn't surfaced into the interface. So if I go into tests here, which one is it? So we do have that. We call that item analysis, and I've ran some in here. Well, let me run one on this one. So I run this. It actually takes nothing at all, but it gives me all that information. So out of possible points, some summary information, average score, how many good questions are there. So this discrimination index comes from the Pearson it gives me difficulty, and then it gives me this index. Close to 1 is good, negative is bad, something like that. And I have, statistics for each one. If I click on this one, it will give me, the kind of distribution on answers for each of the different responses out of that multiple choice question. And it will divide the group in basic reports and it will give you the distribution. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we do have that. It's part of the core. We're just, as you can see this, probably too much for
95% of people would never use this.
Yeah, I mean, you would be surprised.
Nurses just, like, it's different.
You guys, yes. I mean,
Good, different, for good reasons.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to see minus cardiologist
Right.
or nurse or like that.
Our job is to kill people.
Yeah.
So,
You got a bad day?
so what we do is we have what's called a data lake. So basically, we take information from different sources, we anonymize it, but we reference the tools, how they've been used. We classify the type of users, and we try to understand this higher ed, this K-12. We understand kind of like different pools of data and where they come from, but not individual particular users. So we take all that data and we use that to analyze how the system's being used, and that's how we know that less than 5% of people actually use this
And I
report.
would say the health department will use
Yes.
this type of stuff,
Yes.
because most of us have to have ice spaces.
Yeah. And you have,
So
you
we
have
have to
price-based, low-stakes testing, you have more outcomes-based assessment, you have evidence-based learning, it's very different.
Right. So let's go to outcomes-based assessment. Do you guys link assignments to
Goals.
Yes.
so that we can I can pull up data?
The idea is to get the instructor, remove the instructor from the program assessment process. So the only thing that they have to do is to link the assignment. So I'm going again into the same assignment. This one is actually linked into general ed. So if I click that, that's assigned to critical thinking or whatever. Right? So they just do that. They forget to keep on teaching their courses. Yeah, and also for the assessment process, we can help you with a secondary evaluation process in which you basically sample. Instead of bringing all of the artifacts, you sample course, representative sample of student work, and then you apply the assessment rubric on top of that, and so you can have a sense of where you're going. Or if you want like a complete brute force approach and you want all the data, you can look at test scores, performance scores, sort of program. So it depends on how you want to implement it. I personally like the secondary evaluation because it brings a separate pair of eyes with knowledge of it and then applies a rubric. So, but then again, it's up to you.
That's more for NLN stuff or whatever you're.
Yeah, inquiries and.
So we're right on the 2 p.m. mark. I can answer more questions if you guys have.
You got one more thing, is Steve Jobs, one more thing.
And one more thing.
Everybody gets that one.
Look at it, it's so thin. Okay. I wish I could do that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I think it'll be, like, if you guys have challenges comparing and contrasting, we talked a lot about things that in between, like collaborate or ally, or the way in which we train and support. By all means, let us know. We're really supportive of whatever you guys want to do.
What makes you better than me?
Yeah, well, my opinion, these guys can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking, no one else has to say
Yeah.
this part. I'm just curious, like, what's your sales pitch? What's what makes you better?
In an elevator.
What dream to learn, canvas, good thoughts?
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to buy a box,
Huh?
you want to buy a box, like, you know, so, like, I go to Best Buy and I'm like, I want the best box. Like a box of software, right? Some pretty good boxes out there. I think our box is pretty awesome. I think both our boxes are pretty good. But at a certain point, when you guys take distance education really, really seriously, you need, it's cheesy, but you need a partner, like somebody that's serious about education. So if you look at us as a company, we don't own or do anything about education. We own an analytics piece that solely focuses on research and making a difference on student success. We own student services. We own LMSs. We own other like teaching and learning technologies, and that gives us a context on education that when you just build an LMS, you just don't get. It's like you don't have that stuff. And the people we staff our company with, your customer success advocate, has been a teacher, has been an admin, has been a dean, or has taught, has been in institutions. I spent my life in education, so we're not just this like couple of young software guys that want to come sell you software. We're passionate about this. We're an education company. So at the end of the day, when you need to do something mission critical that's not a button in a box, it makes a big difference. Something always goes wrong with technology.
I would like to tie my response to that, which is that one, the last thing that he said, that's very, very important. I've been with education and technology for quite a while, and if there's one thing that's true about technology is that it always breaks. So no matter what everyone says, software is a human product and therefore it's bound to fail. So when that fails, it is the people who really make a difference. And that is what I like about BlackBoard. It's the people in the organization and the way that we address our clients' needs. That's what really makes us different. It's not the software. I mean, yes, it's awesome. Like, you said, it's a nice box. But it's not the box. Ultimately, it's what's behind the box, and I think that's what.
Some schools just want a box. I don't think you guys are that school. Like, I get small, like, little country schools, and they're like 1,500 FTE, and we have 75 courses online. We're going to bring 5 more next semester. And I'm like, great, you're at a place, you're kind of institution that's not that big a deal. You guys, you're hiring people that are over virtual learning. You're making investments. You have goals around access to the community. Take things very seriously. I don't think they're that much.
I also have been in an opportunity to be with a lot of clients, not just in the United States, Canada, Latin America, Europe. And one thing that I notice is that when the conversation with a client is around the feature, the button, the client is not because of us, but it is really a more difficult conversation to have. When the conversation is, hey, I've been trying to solve this problem, right? And when you actually have a conversation from person to person, like in this case, it's vendor client, right? When we have a person-to-person conversation, everything is better. When it's a client provider kind of conversation where you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that, then that kind of, it just breaks.
That's on us as much as it's on you guys.
Yeah.
We have to really
show up, be dedicated, build a partnership. You guys have to do the same, we have to hold you accountable, but that's on us. It's on you.
Conversation.
Exactly.
Can you tell us, if there's any institutions, move or switch from more?
We just did, that was one we just did. Maybe I'm blanking, I thought we just moved a big little.
Not that I can talk about institutions that have moved from ingrown, like in-house, like, not Moodle, but I was thinking about University of Phoenix. I mean, they had their own in-house, it's a very different kind of animal, right? But they moved into Blackboard.
We were just, I won't name names, but I was in Omaha yesterday. There was a school there that was like looking at somewhere else, and they made this same decision. We want a partner, we want a box. And they had already chosen. We sat down, we're like, we're gonna be partners, and they backed out of it, and now for the next 5 years, they made a 5-year commitment.
Talk about them. You don't want to mention it.
The name's on your flyers in here. Hallway. And they're awesome. Yeah, we went and had dinner with them, and they're like, give me straight, this is the problem, this is what I need. Not focused on this, focusing on that. Like, we want you part of our team, we're not 2 separate teams. And like, I think they feel it, they give you the same story. And I think, you know, I have an example all the country. The thing you're gonna see is, I don't know, like if it's your mission, I think that's what you should allow. We have a lot of really big schools, like the biggest schools in the country, doesn't mean they're like you. They give you schools like you that maybe are better match. You tell me what that is. Really, what I would say, developing large 2-year institutions, I think are probably good peers for you guys. Mission driven, teaching schools, research schools, community focus. Like, yeah. Just having like 5 R1s on your platform doesn't mean anything to me unless I'm an R1. I think it's kind of silly. I work, yeah. You guys got a good choice in front of it. We would love to be partners in either way. We'll make sure you're happy.
This is Blackboard Ultra, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm on Blackboard at Wesleyan and it sucks.
It looks very
So,
different, yeah.
It looks like 2000.
Probably, yeah, and it's just,
It's a different.
it's not intuitive, it's not comfortable to move around on. So,
The problem with
when I heard Blackboard, that's all I said.
Yeah. The problem with
Have you been pleasantly surprised with this though?
It looks nice, I'm not, the color scheme.
Yeah, I've had that. Well, we use black, so that's our company. Well, obviously, you can change that. Color scheme can change.
It's very
The
monochromatic.
the whiteness in there, those or the space, those have those serve a purpose. Which is
psychologically driven to use.
drive attention to a spot.
They the problem with Blackboard is that it's not Blackboard. You go to a company, you go to a campus, and you're like, I so frequent. You're like, what are you using? And they're like, we're on version whatever. And I'm like, that was built like 2009.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, and you're like, please move to the new one. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt. Like, everybody sees us as that. And so unless you're on a SaaS platform where we put a release out every month, you're not on the thing, right? So we have schools that lag 6 months, a year, 3 years. I think the worst I've ever seen is like 7 years. And that's at that point, we're like, we don't even support that. Like, we don't even offer support. And they're like, eh. So we had schools that the experience is really bad. We talked to very old code. This one's awesome. I'm ready to take this forward. It's anything you guys want to compare. Developing, you have a year left of maturity. So by the time you guys went to Ultra, you're going to be really happy.
You guys should go to Baby World probably.
Yeah, that would be great. If you guys are making a decision in the summer,
We have our conference.
Oh, yeah,
later.
I've seen it.
We'll make a decision by the end of this quarter.
okay.
Oh, really? That'd be nice to let us know.
We do one year in Vegas and 1 year outside of Vegas.
We're going back to Vegas.
We're going
On
back
the
to Vegas, as far
left-hand
as I
side,
know.
otherwise the rest of
Because
the
some clients don't want to
I
go to
have
Vegas.
it. I have it.
So last year was in
Oh,
New Orleans.
I'm like,
I can add that.
so, just, yeah.
I just
I
try to
know,
keep
I
it
know what our
as
goals
less
are.
It's a user conference, so it's like
Yeah.
all the
Because
schools.
there's
that
all
use it,
the
admins and
same
RDs
amount
and
of
stable
right,
section.
Right.
You
But
could
you
have
have to
like-
put countdown
We had
to decision.
We had
right
University
off
of
the top.
Arizona.
Well, I
I'm sorry,
don't
Northern
have
Arizona
an exact
University
date,
came
so
and was
it's
like,
just
we figured out this really cool
somewhat,
thing.
Yeah.
With how to configure divine automation, like we didn't know.
But we know it's gonna be.
250 other schools all wanted to learn from them. So they went and they're like, they shared their code,
Well,
it's
and
$4,
again,
so it's really.
And also, we have the Moodle Moots and the BlackBoard user group conference, it's the same.
it's based off of vendor.
So the Moodle Moot is the kind of like,
And that's why there's.
that's the way to call like their user.
Unfortunately, like nursing and healthcare.
They were all in the same building at the same time, so it was interesting.
We're Orlando this year.
We're Orlando? Oh, I thought we were going back to Vegas.
Maybe we'll meet on July 16th. We have DevCon too, so if you are there, I think about on the technical side, there was a couple days before where it's all DevCon. And this is usually the Moodle move to coincide. So if our
And that's
Moodle
what
users
we
can
have
show up
the
to BlackBoard, then they'll have like a
available,
Moodle move. This is typically the same place,
And
different area.
you still have
We'll come
access
together
to
for
the
stuff,
sites,
we'll learn stuff that's not element specific.
Yeah.
You do a discount.
questions,
Where's
Yeah,
our?
just usually group discount, you know, if it's.
The evaluation
Somebody
form
that's like,
won't be.
we don't even know if we want to be like some kind of sponsor. a couple of people.
Vendors, but the document you can dump is what
The downside is you gotta go to Orlando.
Like, I can.
Unless you like this.
I'm trying to understand, like,
Oh, I always
Just
go to Orlando.
so that
The
way
level
we
of
can.
faculty, like,
Unless you like, let's have my kids in the parks.
I'm not a big fan of Orlando myself. I'd rather go to Vegas.
I like San Diego. I like going to San Diego.
But like, I didn't see the deal.
I went to San Diego, that was
Right, like, I
2000.
didn't see it,
Yeah, and
and
that's
I know,
part of it.
and so that's why I was thinking, it almost be better to have a survey that I can just write down on the record and give to you guys, and then.
UTD?
like, my
No, not Ultra, they're using original.
Yeah, but probably in the class,
We have not moved them over because they have a complicated integration.
there's pros and
Yeah.
cons to both.
we have a flexibility, like, we have the host you, you host us, we can cloud, you.
Trying to get people to do.
We should go talk to them soon.
Yeah, I'm ready. When you want.
Yeah.
Based on reviews.
Tell us guys.
Oh, see, and I would just, read data surveys, like. sit
Yes.
down here.
Yeah.
Here you go, here's my phone.
2 weeks ago.
You know,
Somebody told me that
You
now
can
it's
use
started
those.
because all the
but
people that
but I don't know what
go
you're.
to use it.
That document,
And they all like,
those
we're getting out of it,
configurations,
and they went, no,
the,
now.
like,
And I did,
every
I
three
used to have
sections,
I
whatever.
love the view voice.
And then you
Weather,
can just have
weather,
a general.
traffic sucks, circles. Every time
So
I'm
you're free to email me
I like the view voice.
Much mean?
Yeah.
A and I E.
Huge.